They called me Flight School Barbie in front of the entire hangar, laughed when I couldn't answer their technical questions. One even slapped my flight manual out of my hands and told me to quit before I killed someone. They had no idea I was their new commanding officer. I'll never forget the smell of jet fuel mixed with fresh coffee that morning. It was my first day at Ridgemont Air Base, and I was walking into the ready room with my flight bag over my shoulder, trying to look confident even though my heart was hammering in my chest. I'd left behind a comfortable career flying international routes for a major airline. 6,000 flight hours, commendations for emergency landings, a reputation I'd built over years of proving myself in cockpits where people always seemed surprised to see a woman at the controls. But I wanted more. I wanted the challenge, the precision, the rush of tactical flying. So when the military contract position opened up, I jumped at it. The ready room went quiet when I walked in. 3 guys in flight suits were leaning against a table, and the second they saw me, I watched their eyes do that thing, that scan, that instant judgment. The tallest one, dark-haired with a cocky smirk, straightened up and exchanged a look with the others. I could already feel it coming, but I pushed forward anyway. Professional, polite. I extended my hand and started to introduce myself. "Hi, I'm Reverie Castellanos. I just wanted to—" "Whoa, hold up." The tall one cut me off, not even glancing at my outstretched hand. "Did you take a wrong turn from the flight attendant lounge?" His buddies laughed and I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my composure. I lowered my hand slowly and tried again. "No, I'm one of the new pilots. I wanted to ask about the squadron's tactical protocols and—" "Tactical protocols?" The blonde one, clean-cut and dripping with privilege, looked at me like I'd just asked how to tie my shoes. "Sweetheart, why don't you observe for a few months before trying to play with the big boys? This isn't exactly passenger service." More laughter. The third guy, quieter but still smirking, just shook his head like I was a joke he didn't even need to voice out loud. I tried to stay professional. I asked specific questions about aircraft specs, about the base's operational procedures, but every time I spoke, they talked over me. Every time I tried to contribute, they exchanged those looks, those knowing, dismissive looks that said I didn't belong. The tall one, who I later learned was named Thorn, finally grabbed my flight manual right out of my hands, just slapped it down, sent it flying across the floor with papers scattering everywhere. Personnel walking by stopped and stared. My face burned with humiliation as I bent down to pick up the pages. "Maybe stick to what you know," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "Whatever that is." The next few days were worse. They didn't just ignore me, they actively treated me like I was support staff. "Hey, grab us some coffee, would you? Can you take notes during this briefing?" When I tried to offer tactical suggestions during planning sessions, they literally talked over me like I wasn't even there. The blonde one, Bexley, made a point of questioning my experience in front of everyone. "What did you fly before this, crop dusters, little Cessnas?" When I mentioned my commercial aviation background, flying wide-body international aircraft with hundreds of passengers, he actually laughed. "Commercial flying is basically autopilot and hoping nothing goes wrong. This is combat aviation, totally different league." I started spending my nights alone in my quarters, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. I'd given up stability, given up a career where I'd finally earned respect for this, for being treated like I was less than nothing. But the worst came during a squadron gathering in the mess hall. Everyone was there, maybe 30 people, and Thorne decided it was time for his little tradition of roasting new pilots. When he got to me, his eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Here's our newest pilot, and I use that term very loosely. She's here because someone checked a diversity box, not because she earned anything. Give it 2 weeks before she washes out or requests a transfer back to whatever easy gig she came from." The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Bexley piled on. "At least she'll look good in the group photos, right?" I stood up, my hands shaking but my voice steady. I was about to speak when the quiet one, Cade, cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Save it. Actions speak louder than words, and so far you've shown us nothing." I walked out of that mess hall with my head high and my jaw clenched, but inside something had shifted. They wanted to see actions? Fine. I'd show them exactly what I was capable of. After that night in the mess hall, something crystallized inside me. I stopped trying to fit in, stopped defending myself, stopped explaining. If they wanted to see actions, I'd give them actions, but not the kind they expected. I became a ghost in that squadron. Present, but unreachable. Polite, but distant. And while they were laughing and bonding over beers every night, I was studying. I mean really studying. I pulled every tactical manual from the base library. Aircraft performance data, emergency procedures, advanced combat maneuvers, weather patterns specific to our operational zone. I memorized specifications for every aircraft in our fleet. I volunteered for extra simulator hours when everyone else was partying in town. 4 in the morning, you'd find me on the flight line doing walkarounds, learning every inch of those birds. While Thorne and his crew were sleeping off hangovers, I was running the perimeter track, pushing my body, sharpening my mind. The other personnel on base started noticing. The crew chiefs, the maintenance teams, the logistics officers, they'd see me there before dawn, still there after sunset. One of the older mechanics, a guy named Rodriguez with 30 years under his belt, pulled me aside one morning. "You're not like those other hot shots," he said. "You've got something to prove, I can tell, but you're doing it the right way." I just nodded. I didn't tell him what I was really doing, what I was really waiting for, because here's what they didn't know about me. Here's what Thorne and Bexley and Cade never bothered to ask. I didn't leave commercial aviation because I was running from something. I left because I'd already conquered it. 3 years ago, I was flying a 777 from Singapore to San Francisco with 340 passengers on board. 18 hours into the flight, we lost hydraulics over the Pacific. Total system failure. The kind of emergency that ends careers or lives. I had maybe 4 minutes to make decisions that would determine whether those people lived or died. I brought that aircraft down in Anchorage with 0 injuries, manual controls, pure feel and instinct. The NTSB called it one of the most impressive emergency landings they'd reviewed in a decade. I was 25 years old. I got commendations, interviews, the whole thing. But after the adrenaline wore off, after the media circus died down, I realized something. I was bored. The routine was killing me. Autopilot from point A to point B, following the same procedures, the same routes. I needed more. I needed the challenge of tactical flying, split-second decisions, the edge. So when military contract aviation came calling, specifically recruiting pilots with decision-making skills under extreme pressure, I jumped. And now here I was, being treated like I couldn't handle a basic aircraft because I had the audacity to ask questions and not have a certain kind of swagger. But I kept my mouth shut and kept working. And while I was working, I was also watching. See, they didn't know that I'd been given access to personnel files. They didn't know I was already reviewing performance reports, maintenance logs, flight records. And what I found was interesting. Very interesting. Thorne had been cutting corners on pre-flight safety checks, multiple instances documented by crew chiefs that somehow never made it up the chain of command. Bexley was inflating his flight hours in official reports, claiming combat simulation time he'd never actually completed. And Cade, the quiet one who I'd almost felt sorry for, was filing false after-action reports to cover for both of them. They were a team, all right. A team of frauds propping each other up. I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, witness statements from maintenance personnel who were too afraid to speak up. I filed it all away in a secure folder and waited. Then one afternoon, about 2 weeks into my silent preparation, I was in the ready room reviewing charts when Thorne walked in with his crew. He saw me and couldn't resist. "Hey, when does the new squadron leader arrive? I heard command is changing." I looked up, carefully neutral. "Next week, I think." "Why?" Bexley laughed, that cruel, entitled laugh. "Because Commander Castellanos is coming, and he doesn't tolerate mediocrity. You better start packing your bags now, sweetheart. He's going to clean house, and you're first on the list." Thorne nodded, grinning. "Yeah, Commander R. Castellanos is a legend. Old school. Demands excellence. Weaklings like you won't last a week under his command." I just smiled. A small smile. "Thanks for the heads up," I said quietly, and went back to my charts. They had no idea that Commander R. Castellanos wasn't a he, and they were about to find out exactly what the R stood for. The morning of the official change of command ceremony, I woke up at 0400 like always, but this time, instead of my standard flight suit, I put on my full dress uniform. Every ribbon perfectly aligned, every crease razor sharp. My hair pulled back in a tight bun, not a strand out of place, and there, on my collar, the insignia they'd never seen me wear before. Commander rank. I looked at myself in the mirror and took a deep breath. Today, everything changed. The entire squadron was assembled in the main briefing hall by 0700, 40-plus personnel standing at attention. I could see Thorne, Bexley, and Cade near the front, chatting casually, completely relaxed. They had no idea what was coming. The base commander entered first, and everyone snapped to attention. Then he gestured toward the door, and I walked in. Full dress uniform. Commander insignia visible to everyone. The silence that fell over that room was deafening. I watched Thorne's face drain of color, literally watched the blood leave his cheeks as his brain tried to process what his eyes were seeing. Bexley's mouth fell open. Cade went completely rigid. The base commander's voice boomed across the room. "Squadron, I want to introduce your new leader, Commander Reverie Castellanos. She comes to us with over 6,000 flight hours, multiple emergency landing certifications, tactical training from 3 separate advanced programs, and a track record that speaks for itself." Thorne tried to speak. Actually stammered something, but I cut him off with a single look. Ice cold. "Pilot Officer Thorne, you will speak when spoken to." My voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. He closed his mouth so fast I heard his teeth click. I took my position at the front and addressed the squadron professionally, outlined new training protocols, safety standards, operational expectations. Everyone was listening intently, but I could feel the tension radiating from those three. Then I paused. Let the silence hang for just a moment. However, before we move forward with our mission, we need to address some serious disciplinary issues that have come to my attention. I pulled up documentation on the screen behind me, maintenance logs, safety violation reports, timestamps, and witness statements. Pilot Officer Thorne front and center. He walked forward like a man heading to his execution, his confidence completely shattered. I kept my voice level, professional, but every word was a surgical strike. Over the past 2 weeks, you have committed multiple violations. You struck official materials from my hands in front of witnesses. You publicly stated, and I quote, that I was a diversity hire who earned nothing. You questioned whether I would kill someone due to incompetence. You also cut corners on pre-flight safety checks on 4 separate occasions, documented here by Crew Chief Rodriguez. I let that sink in. The room was silent except for someone's sharp intake of breath. "You're grounded pending a full investigation. Report to the base commander's office at 1300 hours. Dismissed." His face went from pale to red to pale again. He tried to stammer something, but I'd already moved on. "Pilot Officer Bexley, front and center." He approached, and I could see him trying to summon that entitled confidence, trying to figure out how to use his father's rank as a shield. I didn't give him the chance. "You told me to observe for a few months before playing with the big boys. Consider this your observation period. From the ground, you've been falsifying flight hours, claiming combat simulation time you never completed. That's falsification of official records, which is a court-martial offense." "My father is a—" he started. I raised one hand, just one hand. He stopped talking. "Your father's stars don't shine on your collar, pilot officer, and they won't protect you from the consequences of your actions. You're grounded indefinitely, dismissed." Then I turned to Cade. He was already pale, sweating, knowing his turn had come. "Pilot Officer Cade, front and center." He approached slowly, and I let the silence stretch. "You stayed quiet. You enabled. You chose complicity over integrity. You filed false reports to cover for these two." He swallowed hard, nodding slightly. Then I did something he didn't expect. "But you never directly insulted me. You never struck me. You followed where others led, which makes you weak, but not beyond redemption. I leaned forward slightly. You have one chance. Remedial training. Doubled flight hours. You report directly to me. Fail once and you're done. Do you understand? His voice cracked when he answered. Yes, Commander. Thank you, Commander. I wasn't just getting revenge. I was teaching them what real leadership looked like. 6 weeks later, the squadron had completely transformed. It wasn't just about discipline or fear. It was about excellence. I'd implemented new training protocols that actually challenged people, pushed them to be better than they thought they could be. And you know what? They rose to meet it. Every single one of them. The ready room that used to feel hostile now buzzed with focused energy. Pilots were studying together, sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it. The maintenance crews were happier because safety checks were actually being completed properly. Even the base commander pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "Whatever you're doing, Castellanos, keep doing it. This squadron's performance metrics have jumped 20%. But the real test came during an advanced tactical training flight. We were running a complex scenario, multiple aircraft, simulated combat conditions. I was leading the formation and we hit unexpected wind shear at low altitude, the kind of situation where split-second decisions mean everything. I called out adjustments, repositioned the formation, and executed a recovery maneuver that I'd spent years perfecting. It wasn't by the book. It was better than the book. When we landed, the entire ground crew was waiting. I could see it in their faces. They'd been watching on radar, and they knew what they'd witnessed. In the ready room afterward, I heard one of the senior pilots talking to another. "Did you see that split-S recovery? That was textbook perfection." The other pilot shook his head. "Textbook? That was art. I've never seen anyone handle wind shear like that at that altitude. She made it look easy." I didn't say anything. Just filed my report and moved on. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good, not because I needed their approval, but because I'd proven what I always knew. Excellence speaks for itself. That afternoon, Thorne appeared at my office door. He'd been reassigned to desk duty pending his transfer to another base, a demotion that would follow him for the rest of his career. He stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, humbled. "Commander, may I speak with you?" I gestured for him to enter, and he stood at attention, but his eyes were different now. No arrogance, no mockery, just someone who'd been forced to confront who he really was. "I was wrong," he said quietly, "about everything. About you. About what makes a good pilot. About what leadership looks like. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair and studied him for a long moment. I could have destroyed him right there, could have twisted the knife, but that's not who I am. You were wrong because you judged without knowing. You saw what you expected to see instead of what was actually there. That makes you a mediocre pilot at best, and in this job, mediocrity kills people. He nodded, taking it. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. But mediocrity can be trained out of someone. Arrogance? That's much harder to fix. I handed him the envelope. He opened it, confused, and I watched his expression shift as he read. It was a recommendation letter, not for dismissal, for remedial officer training at a facility known for turning around struggling pilots. A second chance he absolutely didn't deserve, but might actually earn. "Don't waste this," I said simply, "and don't ever treat another pilot the way you treated me. Not because of their gender, their background, or anything else. Judge people by their actions and their skills. Nothing else matters up there." He looked at me with something like awe. "Thank you, Commander. I won't waste it." He saluted properly this time and left. Later that evening, I sat in the cockpit of my aircraft before a night training flight. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. I put my hands on the controls and felt that familiar sense of rightness. This was where I belonged. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I'd proven myself right. They'd called me weak, said I didn't belong, tried to humiliate me into quitting. But strength isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing your worth when everyone else doubts it. It's about rising when they expect you to fall. I started the engines, feeling the power thrumming through the aircraft. And I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd never really been in a fight. I'd already won before they even knew the game had started. I was exactly where I was meant to be. To anyone who's been underestimated, mocked, or told they don't belong, keep your head down and your standards high. Let your work do the talking. And when the moment comes to reveal who you really are, make it count. Those junior pilots learned the hardest lesson of their careers. Never judge a book by its cover, and never underestimate someone just because they don't fit your expectations. If this story fired you up, smash that like button and subscribe for more revenge stories that'll make you believe in karma. Drop a comment telling me about a time someone underestimated you. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous.